Good evening, guys. We're going to look at 7-4, a volume of spheres. The volume of a sphere can be found by using the formula 4 times pi times r to the third power, or r cubed, divided by 3. And sometimes you might even see it written in text or on test or something as 4/3 pi r cubed. Okay, but either way will work. And we also want to know what half of a sphere is called, and that's called a hemisphere. So just kind of a little preview of what we might be doing later today. If you have an entire sphere and you have its volume, a hemisphere is half of it. So to take half of something, you're going to divide it by 2. Okay, so if we have a cylinder and a sphere that have the same radii and the same height, and the height as far as a sphere goes is going to be 2 times the radius, which is actually your diameter, right? Then the sphere is going to have 2/3 the volume of a cylinder. So what you know so far is that a cone is 1/3 the volume of a cylinder, and a sphere is going to be 2/3 the volume of a cylinder. Okay, so it says let's use this fact to see how that formula works out. So the formula for the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared times height. If we replace height with 2 times the radius, which again, remember 2r is your diameter, then you're going to have pi r squared times 2r. We know that the sphere is going to be 2/3 the size of the cylinder, so if I multiply that by 2/3, and multiply that 2 times 2, that's going to give me the 4, and then I'm left with pi r squared times r, and that's going to give me the r to the third power. So that's where your dimensions are, is with the radius. Radius times radius times radius. Okay? So let's kind of put that in practice. I think you're going to like this lesson. It's pretty straightforward. Let's find the volume of each sphere using 3.14 for pi. So it's telling us to use 3.14. We have to use 3.14. So our formula is 4 times pi times r to the third power divided by 3. Now I'm going to teach you a new button on your calculator. So look at the calculator, look all the way over to the right underneath the off button. You're going to see a button that looks like a y to the x power. That allows us to raise a number to any power. I actually call it the raise it button. I'll say raise it to, and that's what we're talking about. So if I plug in values, for this one we know the radius is 3, so we're going to do 4 times 3.14 times the radius, which is 3, and we're going to raise it to the third power. We're going to hit equal and divide all of that by 3. So just write that down, pause it when you write that down, and then grab a calculator. Okay, now that you have your calculator, you're going to say 4 times 3.14 times 3. Hit that y to the x button that's underneath the off button. That's going to raise it to a power. Your calculator didn't change any. Hit 3 again, and then hit equal. At this point, you should have 339.12. Divide that by 12, and you're going to get 28. Oh, I'm sorry, I did something wrong. Let me try that again. Times 3. Raise it to the third, divide it by 3. Okay, you're going to get 113. Keep messing up. Sorry, guys, it's late. 113.04. I don't know what the units are, so I'm just going to write units to the third power. Okay, so again, and I know some of my students had trouble with the calculator. 4 times 3.14 times 3. Hit that y to the x button that's telling your calculator you're going to raise it to a power, and then you're going to input 3 again. That's going to raise it to the third power. Hit equal, then divide it by 3. If you still can't get it, then 4 times 3.14 times 3 to the third power would be 3 times 3 times 3 divided by 3. It's going to give you the same answer. It just takes out a couple of extra button or two using the raise it button. Okay. All right. Now, number 2. Let's take a look at number 2. They are giving us diameter. They're being so nice to even tell us that it's diameter by saying D equals 12. But you know that they're giving us diameter because they've shown us the whole width of the circle. Okay, so we know that we need half of it. I still had a student yesterday that asked me, Miss Henry, when you say cut it in half, what do you mean? I mean divide it by 2. So radius is equal to 6 units. Okay, so 12 divided by 2 is 6. So again with our formula, 4 pi r to the third divided by 3. Okay, if we plug in those values, 4 times 3.14 times 6, raise it, we're still raising it to the third power, divided by 3. So again, where it's saying plug in values, I'm just writing it down below so I have a little more room. Okay, once I do that, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to try to put that in your calculator. 4 times 3.14 times 6, hit the raise it button, do the third power. And again, if you don't want to hit the raise it button, if that's not making any sense to you, do 6 times 6 times 6. And then all of that divided by 3. You should get 904.32 units to the third power. Number 3. Okay. This point, I let my students do this one by themselves. They were doing pretty good. They got pretty used to the raise it button. Let's see how you do. Okay. I'm going to give you a moment. And you will get a repeating decimal as your answer. Okay. Hope you paused the video and did it yourself. All right. You got 523.3 repeating. And that's units to the third power. Again, in your calculator, 4 times 3.14 times 5. You can raise it to the third power, or you can multiply by 5 again, by 5 again. Okay, just multiply all those. And take all that and divide it by 3. Okay. Now, 4 through 6, we're going to find the volume of each sphere, but this time we're going to leave our solution in terms of pi. And we did that with 7-1. What that means is we are not going to convert pi to an approximation of 3.4. By leaving it in terms of pi, we're leaving an exact answer. So number 4, the first thing that we need to do, we need to recognize, is that they are giving us diameter, and we need to cut that in half. And half of 13 is a decimal, 6.5. Okay, so keep writing that formula down. The more you write it down, the more automatic it's going to come for you. And there you go. All right, so if we plug in the values, 4 times pi, and I'm not going to change that, so I'm actually going to put pi at the end, times r to the third power, so that would be 6.5, raise it to the third power, divide all that by 3, pi. Okay, so I just moved pi over to the end so I don't forget about it. So 4 times 6.5 raised to the third power, and just to make sure we're on the right track, I'm going to do it here with you. Your numerator should be 1098.5, and then when we divide it by 3, it gives us 366.16 repeating units. Somebody said earlier today, can we, pi units, sorry. Can we round that? It doesn't tell us to round, so no. Don't round. Okay. Number 5, we have a radius of 12, so that one's done for us. So again, 4 pi r to the third divided by 3. So we will do 4 times 12, raise it to the third power, pi divided by 3. Okay, so 4 times 12, raise it to the third power, always hit equal, divided by 3. It's going to give us 200 2,304 pi, and again, units to the third power. Okay, last one of these anyway. We're going to do 4 pi r to the third power divided by 3. And again, they're nice and gave us the radius, so we don't have to do anything to that. So 4 times 9.3, raise it to the third power. Don't forget the pi. Divide by 3. And that's going to give us 1,072.47 pi units to the third power. All right. Let's take a look at number 7. Number 7, it says, let's use the formula of the volume of the spheres to help you answer each question below. Number 7, here's a vocab word we had at the beginning of a lesson. A hemisphere has a radius of 7 inches. Find the volume of the hemisphere. So first, let's find the volume of a sphere. So we're going to find the sphere using our radius of 7. Now, it doesn't tell us to keep it in terms of pi, so I'm just going to go ahead and use 3.14. So I'm going to say 4 times 3.14 times 7, and I'm going to raise it to the power of 3. Take all of that, divide by 2. Divide by 3. Okay, so 4 times 3.14 times 7, raise it to the power of 3, hit equal, then divide all that by 3. And I'm going to get the volume of the sphere is going to be 1,436 and a whole bunch of other numbers there. I think actually that's going to repeat. That's the volume of the total sphere, but I need half of that. So I'm going to divide that by 2. I'm going to leave what I have in my calculator and just hit divided by 2. Okay, and that's going to give me 718.013, and I'm going to put a repeating line over the 3. Okay, and this is in inches, so let me go ahead and put cubic inches. There's our answer. All right, we're going to skip this one and skip this one. And we're going to look a little bit at the bottom, okay? It says we have a cylinder, a cone, and a sphere. They all have a radius of 3 feet, okay, and a height of 6 feet, okay? Find the volume of each, all right? So for the cylinder, we know that that is pi r squared height. So 3.14 times radius squared, 3 squared, times your height of 6, you should get 169.56 units to the third power. So I'm just going to use U for units. Okay, with cone, same formula, pi r squared h, but this time we're going to divide it by 3 because a cone is a third the size. So 169.56 divided by 3 gives us 56.52 cubic units. And then what we learned today, 4 pi r to the third power divided by 3. So 4 times 3.14 times your radius of 3, raise it to the third power, divide by 3, gives you 113.04 units to the third power. Okay. What is the ratio of the volume of the sphere to the volume of the cylinder? So sphere, 113.04 to cylinder divided by 169.56. If you divide those out, what you are going to get is 0.6 repeating, or that's actually going to be 2/3. Let me put my repeating bar up there. Okay, and we said at the beginning of the lesson that the sphere is 2/3 the cylinder. So if I took 169.56 and I multiplied that by 2/3, I'm going to get 113.04. How does the volume of the sphere compare to the cone? All right, so the sphere and the cone, we already said earlier that it should be 2 hemispheres, or 1 sphere is equal to a cone. So let's see if that works out. Okay, so if I take the, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. 2 cones equals 1 sphere. All right, so if I take the volume of the sphere, which is 113.04, and I divide it by the cone of 56.52, you're going to get an answer of 2. So the volume of the sphere is twice as large as the cone. All right, last thing on here, let's list the figures in order for greatest capacity to the least capacity. Okay, back on 7-1, you learned that capacity was another word for volume. All right, so we're going to look for the greatest volume to the least volume. So that's going to be cylinder, followed by sphere, and finally cone is the smallest, provided that their radii and heights are the same. Okay, now I do want to take you over to the homework. Make sure that you're okay with it. So we have some work where we're going to do find your volume in terms of pi and find your volume in the nearest tenth. So let me show you how I want you to do number 1. We've got our diameter of 9, but we need the radius, and the radius is going to be half of that, which is 4.5. Okay, so in terms of pi, we would do 4 times the radius, raise that to the 3rd power, pi, all of that divided by 3. So 4 times 4.5 raised to the 3rd power divided by 3 is equal to 121.5 pi units cubed, right there. Okay, now we need to take that in terms, or in volume to the nearest tenth. That means all I have to do is take that 121.5, multiply that times 3.14. And when I do that, it gives me 381.5. It actually gives me 381.51 square units, but since it says round to the nearest tenth, it is going to give me this answer right here. Okay, so that's how you answer the homework, where you're drawing the lines to each one. Now down here at the bottom, we are going to skip this one, number 7, and we are going to skip number 8. Okay, so those 2 that we're going to skip, everything else I know that you can do. Good luck. If you have any questions, see either Mrs. Bird or myself.